got Hanna Daywood here today, who's the exercise physiologist here at Selene. How are you going, Hanna?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And Hanna, you're in here today to talk to us about everything exercise physiology.
That's correct. I am.
So to start off with, I think a lot of people often don't know what an exercise physiologist is. Can you just give us a bit of a general idea of what is an exercise physiologist? What do you do to become an exercise physiologist? And
yeah, absolutely. I love that question because a lot of the time I get, so you're a personal trainer? No. Yeah. So exercise physiology is basically an allied health profession, and we look at preventing and managing a range of different conditions, diseases, musculoskeletal issues. It's really, really wide and it's really broad. To become an EP, that's the abbreviation for us. It's 5-year uni degree. So so I did a Bachelor of Exercise Science and then went into Masters of Exercise Physiology. Because obviously there's so much ground we've got to cover. You've got to learn everything about the body. You've got to learn all the conditions. You've got to learn all the medications that are prescribed for those conditions. So it's a lot of things. So
that's a huge. So it really is a solid science.
Yes.
You actually do a lot of study to understand everything that is really the expertise in science and how it interacts with the body.
Absolutely.
And exercise and how it interacts with the body.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then on top of that, we also have to learn obviously exercises for managing certain things.
Chronic illness.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, there is. Chronic disease, we all know, is huge. It's an epidemic across the globe, but here in Australia alone, 1 in every 2 people have chronic
ridiculous
disease. What actually is chronic disease? We know it's a global epidemic. We know it's, in Australia, it's like 1 in every 2 people have some form of chronic illness. But what actually does that mean?
Well, at the moment, the biggest one is that everyone's talking about is metabolic chronic disease. So like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, high insulin, which also links to things like PCOS, which we're seeing a massive rise in young females at the moment as well. Yeah. So all of that metabolic, but then also the cardiovascular. So your CVAs, your heart attacks, angina, all of those come under chronic condition.
And a lot of people, Hanna, you hear the word metabolic syndrome or metabolic disease. People don't know what that means. They think maybe diabetes.
Yes.
But diabetes is often the later stage of those sort of precursor conditions, like what you mentioned, hypertension or blood pressure, cholesterol, a whole range of them, triglycerides, all those things. Yeah. And if you have, I think, is it 3 out of 5 of those things that are characterised as metabolic
you're categorised as having metabolic disease. Yeah.
Which is the precursor to a lot of conditions, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's it. And it's those symptoms and those conditions that can sometimes be just, you've just got one, you've just got the other, and they get left untouched. Yeah. And that's when you then start to go into those more chronic conditions such as diabetes. Dementia as well is now been linked to insulin resistance from a younger age as well. Yeah. So there's a range of things where when they're not flagged early enough, or they're just flagged as they're just one thing, it's one symptom, it's one thing, we'll sort it out, that they then lead to those more chronic conditions later on.
So would you recommend if someone has even just one of those metabolic conditions, like a high blood pressure or like a cholesterol,
that's the common one.
Or like the big waist circumference, or like any one of those things, is it better to act on that and manage that early to prevent the condition?
Absolutely. I think we don't focus enough on preventative medicine, and that's where we really should be going, because a lot of the time once you have one, here's your medication, that's a Band-Aid fix, but you're not looking internally at what's actually going on, causing that marker to be at the wrong, either too high, too low. So there's always something that's causing it, and if something's out of whack, eventually over time, if you're not addressing it, a bunch of other things are going to show up as well.
Like they always say, prevention is better than cure.
100%. Yeah.
So you mentioned obviously a lot about metabolic syndrome and the metabolic sort of precursor, and that is one of the big drivers of a lot of chronic conditions. But there's also a whole range of things. So you said often PCOS, which is really common in young girls, they think it's hormonal, but it very much is an insulin resistance condition, isn't it?
It's an insulin resistance. Yeah. All of the research now is starting to show that if you put someone on a low inflammation diet, keto diet for even just 2 weeks, their PCOS symptoms almost halve or disappear. Wow. So that shows that PCOS is very much an inflammatory disease, but also it's linking to insulin, and insulin is to do with the blood sugars, which relates back to the diet and what we're intaking.
Yeah. We will talk a bit more about that in a minute, but just to add to some of the other things that people might not be aware of with chronic conditions. So you mentioned obviously a lot of the metabolic type things, But even autoimmunity conditions are huge and on the rise.
Yeah, and again, to do with inflammation in the body. There's so much inflammation in the body these days from our diet, our lifestyle, everything that is getting put into our bodies through like chemicals, just perfumes, chemicals in food, like all of that is contributing to inflammation in the body. Stress as well, stress from work. We're working more than we ever used to. People are not sleeping well, and everything is just causing inflammation, and that's when, it's the lifestyle.
So, and that's what a lot of the research shows. Lifestyle leads to inflammation, like the way we live, and a lot of the extremes of our lifestyle leading to the chronic inflammation. So there's a term, it's metaflammation is what it's often referred to, which is chronic low-grade inflammation in the body. And it's that, isn't it? It's that chronic inflammation that switches on that disease mechanism that'll take off in someone's body.
Yeah, and unfortunately people won't act on it until they've hit their absolute bottom,
and the disease is there.
So they start noticing one thing, a bit of brain fog or a bit of fatigue, that 3 p.m. slump, my gut's not happy with me, I've got acne showing up, but they just look at that one symptom, they try all the acne creams, like, why isn't this working when it's something else going on?
So it's really about addressing the root cause.
It's about addressing the root cause,
and that's so powerful. The science is really saying if you actually turn off what the cause is, then you have, not only can you prevent, but you can potentially really manage and in many cases reverse.
Well, that's it. Absolutely. And that's not what people are getting told by doctors. Here's your medication, see you next week for another prescription.
So there's a place for medications in terms of managing symptoms, definitely, and in terms of helping some of those processes, but it's really changing lifestyle that actually turns it around for people.
And I think it's the education around lifestyle change as well. So you absolutely take the medication to help manage where you're at, but where's the education on this is what has caused it in the first place, this is what you can do to manage and hopefully reverse a bunch of conditions which have now shown that you can with the right lifestyle changes.
Absolutely. Well, we go on to some of the strategies and exercise, which obviously is a big part of treating chronic illness. We were talking a lot about metabolic health conditions, autoimmunity. There's dementias and a whole range of different chronic conditions that are huge, diabetes. They're all.
Well, I'd put dementia under metabolic conditions these days.
So it's being considered the third diabetes. So now let's talk about lifestyle practices. So obviously we know that lifestyle medicine, which is what Selene really focuses on, is looking at all the different lifestyle factors in someone's life, and that is nutrition, as you mentioned, stress management, sleep, environmental toxins, and then of course there's physical activity and exercise, and that's really your specialty area.
Yes.
So I want to just sort of explain to the listeners a little bit about how exercise does actually help in managing a lot of these chronic conditions.
Yeah.
So some of the things you talked about were the insulin regulation,
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, when we're exercising, we're utilising glucose through the working muscle. So if we do have an excess in glucose, for those who don't know, that's sugar in the bloodstream. So you get that from eating any type of carbohydrate food, whether that is artificial or coming from fruit or coming from your carbohydrates such as bread, pasta, anything that's a carbohydrate will break down into glucose in the body.
Which is what fuels our body.
Which is what fuels our body, absolutely. Our body and our brain. So we need glucose. When we have an excess of glucose,
which is what most of us have,
which is now 90% of the population, that's when we start to get an issue with our insulin and that. And so when we're exercising, we're getting to use some of that glucose, so we're not having an excess of it, and that keeps us at our nice baseline where we want to stay.
So what you're saying then is by having good muscle, and a lot of, like, you want muscle, that helps to manage the amount of glucose in the blood.
That, and also you're utilising it whilst you're exercising as well. So exercising daily is going to help to move that glucose and use that glucose around, but also the more muscle mass, as you just said, the more muscle mass that you have, the more you're going to be using that at rest as well.
Because you're going to have more muscle to use it up.
To utilise it, and to store the glucose as well.
But isn't that a problem because we live such sedentary lives? My understanding is a lot of people are losing a lot of muscle early on, and particularly when you get to that middle age and later years in life, that's one of the biggest problems. It's the loss of muscle.
Well, that's why we're starting to see all of these conditions on the rise, because people are moving a lot less than they used to. They're eating a lot more glucose than they used to, and so everything's out of balance from what we were made to do.
And I know that with women going through menopause, that's huge. Like, so the menopausal situation is that you lose muscle quite rapidly.
Yeah.
So
again, another big one. A little bit different. Rather than the glucose, it's more to do with hormones. So as our estrogen starts to drop, and estrogen has a huge protective mechanism for females. Yeah. As that starts to drop, as we start to go through menopause, it becomes extremely hard to maintain our muscle, but it's also extremely hard to put muscle on. Yeah. And that's where the big issue is at the moment. A lot of people who are starting to go through menopause think, oh, I'm starting to put on weight maybe, starting to get brain fog, like sleepless, want to eat more, their appetite changes, they get their cravings, and they start to put on weight. Yeah. And they think, I need to do cardio, I need to exercise as much as I can. And that's actually the opposite of what they should be doing. They should be lessening the cardio a little bit, so still keeping that aerobic component for their heart health, but starting to really focus on those strengths, that resistance training to maintain the muscle that they have because of that protective mechanism of muscle in the body.
So on that note then, because I think this is the thing, we all know how hard it is and whatnot, in terms of offering the listeners some hope of, well, what do we do to manage this? So it's really, you're saying, a lot more strength-based training, a lot more muscle-building exercise?
A lot more strength-based training. They should be doing that more 5 to 10 rep range, nice and heavy, getting the weights in so that they're building muscle or maintaining muscle. Like I said, it's hard to build muscle when estrogen starts to drop, and just trying to do their best they can with that rather than focusing on going for that run every day.
So you're suggesting then that it is really all about strength training?
Absolutely. As women are starting to go through menopause and their hormones are starting to change, the strength training is what's going to keep them feeling their best, but also at their healthiest as well.
Yeah. So then what happens like when because I hear this quite a lot, but I don't want to beef up, I don't want to get like a bodybuilder. Like, can you just break that myth for us?
One, as a young female, it is extremely hard to put that much muscle on without any assistance from other things. Yeah. You would have to be training ridiculously for your entire life to even put some of that amount of muscle on. So the females that you see, a lot of them are unnatural, or they've just been training a very, very, very long time under tremendous load. So you will never look like that, especially for those females who are starting to age. They don't have enough estrogen in their body to be putting that amount of muscle on. So that's not going to happen.
It is good to exercise and lift weights.
You won't go walking out like the Hulk.
You won't be a bodybuilder.
Nah.
You'll actually just get more definition, which is what you want, more shape.
Absolutely. You're just going to change your body composition, which is where we're all about. So I don't like to look at weight loss going through menopause. I'm more looking at changing the body composition. So if we can increase that muscle mass and decrease the fat mass, that's more what you're looking at, because weight loss is, if you lose muscle, you're going to lose weight. So I don't like that term, especially for females starting to go through menopause. The goal is increase muscle mass.
And in those later years, losing muscle is quite
detrimental.
Detrimental, especially if you're going into the sort of, even 50s plus, you're starting to think about the next 10, 20 years. Risk of falls and frailty and a lot of other conditions.
That's it. Yeah. That's the other benefit of strength training as well. It's going to keep that bone density nice and strong to stop osteoporosis and that risk of falls and that frailty as you do start to age. So it's extremely important for that 50 plus age bracket, and that's probably the age bracket that's doing resistance training the least.
Yeah. And just, although I know that the exercise side is specialty for you, I know you do understand about the benefits of protein with that too, because a lot of people think, okay, well, I'll go out then and I'll do all this weight training, but not understanding that there is a certain amount of protein you have to achieve to help build that muscle, or it won't happen.
Yeah, that's it as well. Muscle is basically protein. Yeah. So when we're strength training, you need protein to then help build that muscle back on top.
It really shows, doesn't it? Exercise, nutrition science, it's not a simple black and white thing. It is quite complex.
And it's different for everyone.
And it is different for everyone, which is why, and I certainly say that to a lot of people, I think getting that very personalised plan for you to achieve your goals and work with what your body does, because everyone processes food and exercises differently.
Yeah, that's where EP really comes into the picture, I guess, because there's not one-side approach for not only the metabolic conditions, it's any condition presents differently. So even if we're talking neurological, so we're talking post-stroke, we're talking Parkinson's, MS, we all deal with that as an EP. There is not one person that presents with the same symptoms, even though they've got the same condition, they've had it for the same amount of years. So that's when you really need that individualized approach. Same with just a regular person coming in. They might have different hormone levels to their friend, So their body's going to respond differently, which is why we need that individualized approach.
And so can you just quickly, before we finish up, sort of explain the kind of conditions you've worked with? So obviously you've mentioned girls with PCOS, women going through menopause, autoimmune conditions. What else? There's a whole range of conditions.
Everything. So like I said, we'll start with neurological. So we do post-stroke, Parkinson's, MS, brain injury, spinal injury, all of them. And then you go into the metabolic, which we've spoken a lot about. So the diabetes, the hypertension, the high cholesterol, all of that cardiovascular, all of that kind of stuff as well. And then we've come into the autoimmune diseases, so fibromyalgia, big one at the moment, POTS, so postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, huge at the moment. So all of these conditions now, driven by inflammation, chronic pain, osteoporosis, all of them.
So you pretty much treat anyone and everyone that has any kind of condition that is
musculoskeletal injuries.
It's essentially the epidemic going through the country. And certainly here at Selene, you obviously work with those kind of clients, and that works in really well with those of us who are working on the gut health and the nutrition side of things, and the GP who might be managing a lot of the hormones. So all of those sort of under one roof, working as a team, is really the best approach.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it all stems down to one or two things, and we need to get on top of that. Multidisciplinary approach is the best way, because not one person knows all, and not one person can fix all. So that's what I like here about Selene, is that we've got that team. We can talk within each other. We've got the gut testing we can go through. We've got the doctor who can go and prescribe blood tests and find out whatever we need to then circle back and really get on top of whatever's going on.
So before we wrap up, I have a question for you. Can you give me one occasion or a case or someone you've worked with that has just left you feeling so emotional and grateful for what you're able to do for them, that you felt you really made a great transformation to their life?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't say names because I don't know if they want to, but
just an example of it.
We've actually got a lady here who's been working with us, I think, for maybe just over 6 months now. And when she came in, the first thing she said to me was, "I hate exercise." And I was like, "Oh, you're in a great place, great start." And she was really hesitant to exercise. She'd just been told by her doctor that she was on borderline diabetic, so her bloods were quite high, and she hadn't been exercising for a good part of 50 plus years, so she hadn't exercised much of her life at all. We started in the gym. I remember we started with maybe 3 kilo dumbbells, and now we've actually got her doing a barbell squat, and for reference, that bar's 20 kilos.
Wow, that's huge.
And every time she comes in, she's now chatting with other members and other clients. She uses it as an outlet. She says everything at home's become a lot easier. She can get herself off the floor now without assistance, and just to see the change in her confidence in herself, but also her just come out of her shell. She wouldn't talk to everyone when she first came in.
I have goosebumps.
The best part, she went and got her bloods redone, and they've gone down.
Oh, fantastic.
Just with exercise implementation.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, so
it just shows the power. You know, you hear like food is medicine and sleep is medicine, exercise is medicine. I mean, it doesn't matter what people say. It is medicine. It is the medicine that treats the root cause of the condition, and that is a perfect example. It just makes me like, so excited to
Me too. And when she told me, I was over the moon. She's been so consistent, 2 times a week for the last 6 months, even though at the start she hated it. She's learned to love it, which is what we want. And
she really hasn't had to, I mean, apart from the consistent 2 days a week that she's coming to exercise, it's not like she's sacrificed to do it.
Not at all. Nothing. And she enjoys coming. So it's a social outlet. It's her way to unwind after a long day at work, de-stress. Another big thing, exercise is to reduce stress. So that was really awesome when she's come in and said that. Every week she comes in with a little comment, so it's great.
Well done. I can see why you're beaming, big smile there. All I can say is, you know, if the take-home message is anything anyone's learned from today, is you've really got to move. Movement. Our bodies were designed to move.
You don't move it,
you lose
it. That's it.
On that note, we'll finish up, but thank you so much for sharing all that information with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. I'm sure we'll have lots of chats going forward again. Thanks so much, Hanna.
Thank you.